Okay, so I want to talk about dumb phones and sort of how the world used to be kind of a completely different place to how it is today in 2025. If I'm thinking about today, everything sort of just moves a whole lot faster. Every single silence is filled. And if we're ever bored or in a lull or anything at all, it's never been easier to sort of just be entertained. And it's not that we'd ever really want to go back to how things were truly, because today is actually pretty badass at the same time, but it's never been harder to just sort of allow ourselves to be bored. Before smartphones, at least, and fast access to information, we would simply allow our minds to wander. We would do weird things like reading the back of a shampoo bottle in the bathroom, or we just do the random things that interest us and find new hobbies because that's just what we did. For myself, I jump into a bunch of different things, some of which are hobbies that have sort of stuck with me even up until today. I draw the most random things. I can't say that drawing and sketching has stuck with me up until now because I really am just not that good. But I do other things like skateboarding, which has sort of stuck with me on and off, a little less now in my 30s, but it is still there with me that I enjoy it. And if it counts, video games have definitely stuck. Now, that isn't to say all the tech we have today isn't also incredibly marvelous, because it puts the entire world in our pockets. We have the entire planet worth of information that we can learn in the palm of our hand. And to me, that is still absolutely incredible. I've learned how to do cinematography. I've learned how to use a camera. I've learned a whole ton of things just through the internet alone. And again, as great as these devices are, you always have the expectation to be available at all hours, 24/7. You're forever going to be online in that case. Likewise, a huge one for a lot of people comes down to something like doom scrolling, which might very well be the best and the worst dopamine hit we could ever get whenever we get bored. And the fact is, I run a tech channel, so the irony isn't lost on me how you're watching this video. You might be watching this on your smartphone at the same time, but one of the things that I've done personally over, I guess, almost going on a year now, has been using dumb phones as my main device. And just to be clear as well, dumb phones are absolutely not a one-size-fits-all solution. Dumb phones might be useless. You might not be able to use a dumb phone at all, but for a lot of people, something like a dumb phone can have a drastic improvement to your day-to-day. And just so I'm not pretending to anybody else, I might go back to a smartphone. I love smartphones. I love the latest tech, and reviewing them is a huge part of what I enjoy doing, but I still do find myself keep coming back to something like a dumb phone. For the most part though, my main goal is not just to double down on a singular type of device, but it's just to reduce my screen time as a whole, and as corny as it sounds, simply be more present day to day. Now, I want to start by saying that when people sort of think about digital minimalism and using a dumb phone, the mind automatically goes to the extreme, like I have to quit social media and never touch it again, when that's truly just not the case. And I will say, for a lot of people who might have a better resolve than myself, you can just delete all the apps off of your iPhone or your Samsung Galaxy or whatever it is you have. You can just delete the apps and move on with it, and you're perfectly fine. For somebody like myself, I don't really have the same willpower as some other people, and those apps some way somehow find their way back onto my phone. I could just be tired that day and I just say screw it, and I just download all the apps and enjoy my reels and TikToks and all that. I could have had a shitty day at work, so I'll crawl up in my bed after work and just doom scroll for an hour or two, and that's just the reality of how it can be for some people. So if you have a better willpower than myself, again, just delete the apps and all the power to you. I guess the dumb phone sort of takes willpower out of the equation entirely, and we're just dependent on the device for what it actually has to offer, and there's no temptation otherwise. But going back to talking about how I access social media and stuff, because no, you don't have to cut it out. For myself, I like to sort of give myself permission to look at it, and I might do so using something like my computer or my tablet, where I'm not sure if it's just a me thing, I just don't particularly find it as doom scrolly or addictive. It could be because something like Instagram doesn't have a dedicated app on iPad, or there's a little bit of friction, or something like the computer where it's just not the same. I'm sitting here at my computer and I don't really think it's the best way to browse social media, but I still get my fix in when I need to, and then I move on with it. And I no longer have the desire to have it in my pocket with me at all times. I will say as well, maybe after swapping to a more basic device like a flip phone or whatever dumb phone it might be, that smartphone flinch that you typically get when you get bored or your mind starts to wander, you might just reach out for your smartphone. That flinch sort of goes away after maybe a week or two. Again, it's going to be different for everybody. That's just how it was for myself. I found in my day-to-day, at least, that's sort of around the same time where my mind starts to wander around, and other things that would typically seem boring aren't as boring anymore. And it's kind of weird. It might just be for myself, but I found even before I swapped to dumb phones, when I was in the shower, for example, where there's no screens, I'd have the most creative ideas for videos or whatever else I might be having going on. Or otherwise, when I'm laying in bed, finally trying to go to sleep, I might have the most motivation ever to go to the gym at like 12 a.m. So, I mean, that midnight motivation we all get, I think might potentially be because we're turning off our phones or something. That could just be me. It could be weird. But I will say, having used these more basic devices, that creativity and that motivation has sort of become more frequent day to day. I think it might potentially just be our brains doing brain things instead of defaulting to, social media or whatever the case may be. But I don't know, I really do dig it. Today, at least, as ironic as it is, sometimes my face is actually still in my phone because I'll be reading a couple pages of my book on here. But it's a book. I don't think that's going to be as harmful potentially. Otherwise, I'm happy to dive into other things. Like I've gotten into bouldering like every 30-something-year-old recently, it seems. Or again, I might play some video games. I might throw down some songs on my guitar. Otherwise, I might just sort of just vibe out and listen to music, which is something that I've grown to enjoy with my vinyl records. And the more I talk about this stuff in this video, I just sound like such a pretentious loser, but that is just my reality, if I'm completely honest. And look, I know mileage will vary from person to person. Not everybody is going to have, a life epiphany from a flippin' dumb phone. And a lot of this video might sound stupid to some people. I get that. But this has been my reality for almost an entire year now. Just sort of, I don't know, being more intentional with what I'm doing and really just slowing down overall has been massive for myself. And just to double down again, I still review smart devices. There's a new iPhone coming out next month. I'm even going to Google's new press release event later this week to check out their new devices in person. And that's just something that I really enjoy, but I still find myself gravitating back to, my slower devices. And whenever I am on a smartphone, I guess I'm just more intentional with my time spent with these devices. For the first time in like 15 years or so, whenever I do get home, I'm okay not diving to every single notification I might hear. If my phone's somewhere else in my house, if it's in another room entirely, I'm okay just checking whatever message it could be later. And for the first time ever in a long while, I'm okay with it. And it just sort of feels freeing. Now I'm going to go more in depth with the actual dumb phones and stuff I use, as well as some options and how you might be able to sort of convert your smartphone and stuff. I do quickly want to give a huge thanks to Plank for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Earlier, I briefly talked about making better decisions whenever I'm well rested, and it's easy to say, having been sleeping on a Plank Firm Luxe mattress for just over a week now, this really has been a huge improvement to my everyday restfulness. For myself, a good sleep has always sort of been incredibly important, and a firm mattress has been something that I have particularly that just helps towards that. I found finding a solid, firm mattress is either going to be a hit or miss, or just difficult to find entirely, which is where something like this comes in. As somebody who's also sort of suffered with lower back pain as well, there's going to be two things that really help me on the day-to-day. That's going to be standing once an hour. My watch pings me once an hour to stand up. And the second thing, honestly, is just having a good mattress. And as corny as it sounds, it's kind of going to make me sound like a grandpa, but you usually want to invest in things between you and the ground. So that's going to be your footwear, your chair. If you're going to be sitting at a desk all day, it better be a good chair. And the last one, of course, is where you're sleeping at night. And that's where I find value in something like the Firm Luxe. This one here in my bedroom is the king-size Firm Luxe option, which actually shipped rolled up in a box, which is awesome and pretty convenient actually, because it did only end up taking me like 5 minutes to set this up start to finish. So yeah, pretty awesome for that. With Plank as well, you do get a 120-night sleep trial, a limited lifetime warranty, as well as factory direct pricing from their team in Arizona. So if you are in the market for a new mattress and looking to get a solid sleep, be sure to check out plankmattress.com/MinimalisTech and use the code MinimalisTech for 30% off your order at checkout. Huge thanks again to Plank for sponsoring this portion of today's video. Now, to get back into dumb phones, I sort of want to talk about the different options. And honestly, I can say 2025 has been a huge year of dumb phone releases, whether that's going to be the super premium ones, the more basic ones. There's a whole ton of them out there. Starting with something like the basic S flip phones from the 2000s. These are going to be probably the most affordable, but they don't do as much, of course. They won't give you all those apps you might need on the day-to-day. They'll be good for calling, texting, maybe music, if you can toss an SD card in there, but they definitely get the job done. And this is going to be like the dumb phone purists. If there's anybody out there who really just wants to be on a dumb phone with nothing else, those basic ones, the most affordable ones, get the job done. Of course, you have the smartphone you already have. Again, delete all the apps, throw on a minimalist launcher if you want to, and this really does get the job done, and it's the most affordable one because you probably already own a smartphone. This is what I personally do on my iPhone 13 mini. Likewise, whenever I review any new devices that come out, I typically throw a minimalist launcher on there, or I just avoid social media entirely. Now, the happy middle point are going to be devices like this, where it sort of has a dumb phone form factor, but it runs something like full Android. And these I find super interesting because they give you all of the modern day conveniences you might want, like two-factor authentication for your day jobs. They'll give you ride sharing services. I know a lot of people love things like WhatsApp and Spotify. Those are apps you can get on here. Now, why these are a little bit more interesting, at least I find, is because they give you, I guess, a better balance towards pretending like it's a dumb phone, but it really sucks at social media. So if you try to throw down TikToks or Instagram on any of these sort of devices, either the screen is way too small, so it looks like shit, or they just run so poorly that it's almost unbearable to try and play any sort of social media on here, which is why I personally really like them. The reason I think these are the most realistic for most people is because it's the most sustainable, because it gives you all those apps you might want day to day. I personally have 2 young kids in daycare, so I download the daycare app and I wouldn't really want to go without personally. So that's where these sort of devices come in. These types of devices are a solid balance between modern day necessities while still giving you that dumb phone experience. So I really dig these. Honestly, whenever I'm pissed off at somebody, slamming closed a flip phone is one of the most satisfying things. And then there's going to be devices like this. These are the super premium minimalist dumb phones that are really quite a lot more expensive. Honestly, right off the bat, I can't recommend these because of the pricing alone. A device like this is expensive as hell, and it's more so for the people that truly do want to commit a lifestyle change to using a minimalist device, and those are going to cover you perfectly fine. The reason something like this even exists is because there's going to be a premium market for everything. You know, if you go and buy an iPhone, it's going to be expensive as hell. You could technically get away with buying a $200 Android phone or whatever it might be, but some people just want to buy the expensive ass iPhone, and that's sort of what this is. My Light Phone 3, for example, shouldn't have things like Apple Music, but that is a personal creature comfort that I didn't really want to go without, so I did find a way to get it on there. There's lots of roadblocks and hoops you got to jump through if you do want all those fancy apps on there, but it is something that I was willing to do, which is why it's currently my daily driver. That said, probably not for everybody. You're probably better off using something like this, which is probably my favorite device amongst any of the ones I own. Now, talking about these devices, not everything's perfect because there are going to be certain things missing. Of course, you're not going to have things like tap to pay. It's going to be difficult to use things like concert tickets. Group messaging might be a little bit iffy on these unless you have WhatsApp on there or something, and you might actually just get blowback from your friends and family for using a dumb phone in the first place. So that's something to be mindful of. And again, amongst all of these devices, none of them are really going to have good cameras unless maybe you just dumb down your iPhone or whatever. In my world, at least, I'm fortunate to be able to lean into my actual camera whenever I do want to sort of capture those day-to-day memories. I personally love having my camera strapped to me at all times. It's just one of those things that I've grown to appreciate, and I've gotten a whole lot better at both photography and videography, as crappy as I still am. It's just one of those things I love day to day. Between any of these devices though, it really does help halt my addictive tendencies towards stuff like social media, while still sort of giving me utilities that I might need day to day, or otherwise I can still just disconnect whenever I might want. And again, I know for a ton of people this video might seem wildly corny, dumb, pretentious, stupid, and a whole ton of other labels, but for a lot more people seeing this, you might be like myself, who has struggled with screen time, or otherwise you're just tired of constantly being connected. You might romanticize how the world might have been 10 or 20 years ago. For some people, it might just be, trying to have some control over the hand of cards you've been dealt for your life. Well, you might just be super interested in dumb phones, and some of it might just be that our minds are totally fried from constant, convenient dopamine hits, whatever the case may be. For me, at least, my drive to use a device like this is simply to try and attempt to slow down in a world that's constantly speeding up. Being on these devices over the last year has me just enjoying things I haven't really cared about even in the last 2 decades or so. Actually finding enjoyment in exercise for the first time. I'm reading regularly since the first Harry Potter book, and truly just being okay with boredom, letting my mind wander, or otherwise just enjoying the mundane things of life. And as pretentious as it sounds, and I sort of talked about this in previous videos, my moods are remarkably better. I'm more present with my wife and kids, which is absolutely amazing, frankly. And whenever my head is up looking at the world around me instead of down at a smartphone, I'm just happier knowing that there's still a world in present day that I can enjoy. And the best part is, amongst any of this dumb phone stuff, is that there are no set rules. You can swap to a dumb phone for just a weekend and go back to your iPhone on Monday morning. You can swap for just an afternoon, swap for a month, do whatever the hell you want, because none of this really matters to anybody except you. For myself, I'm going to keep using a dumb phone as my daily driver. I'm also going to keep reviewing iPhones and smartphones and everything in between because I just love tech, and that's just who I am. I don't know, for now, I guess I'll keep trying to slow down and have tech work for me instead of the other way around. I appreciate you guys watching till the end. Till next time.